Welcome to Feminized. It's time for a show that turns the spotlight on the powerful women shaping cannabis culture. The cannabis industry is on fire and women are sparking it up. If you like the show, please subscribe. You can also subscribe to the Feminized podcast with Liz Grow on YouTube and Instagram. The future is feminized. Hey sis. You're now listening to the Feminized podcast. Guys, I'm so excited to introduce to you today my next guest on the Feminized podcast, Lulu Tsui, the co-founder and chief experience officer at On The Revel. Welcome.
Yay. Thank you, Liz. I'm super honored to be on this podcast. There's been so many women that I admire as colleagues in the industry who've been on your podcast. So I'm really stoked to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. God, that means so much to hear because, the goal is to create those connections and facilitate more conversation, more of the conversation that's relevant to us as women in the cannabis industry. And so my number one goal is to help you women shine. So
I love that. Thank you for creating the safe space.
Absolutely. Well, you definitely know how to create a safe space. I have to say that I was blessed to be invited to a Revelry event in November in New York. And that's when you came on my radar personally. This cannabis event, guys, for any of you who don't know, Revelry, these are the events that On The Revel produces, and I'm certainly going to let you tell us what On The Revel is all about in these events. But my personal experience, I walked into this cannabis utopia, and it wasn't like flower everywhere and everyone smoking. No, there were diverse, dynamic people who were part of building the cannabis industry. I saw legacy operators. I saw folks who were new to the industry. I didn't want to use a pejorative term for, men specifically who get into the industry quickly. I didn't see a lot of that. I saw a lot of real cannabis influence, business influence meets cultural meets product. And it was in New York. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, thank you, Liz. Thank you for, experiencing that. And that's the vibe that we've always tried to create. So Jacoby Hollins and I created On The Revel back in 2016 in New York. And everything that you talked about was what we wanted to see in a conference. We were going to a lot of the existing business conferences and trade shows, and Jacoby has a really great term. He's like, it's just male, pale, and stale. And, we knew, isn't that great?
That's so good. So good.
We knew that, we've been taking part in cultural events since the very beginning that involved cannabis. We've been to other, we're both in the design space and the product design space. So, those types of events. And we just thought that, hey, we want to do business in a fun way. In any of those, cannabis conferences, most business is either done over dinner or most business is either done in the suites. So, we wanted to fast track that a little bit and just have people meet in a room where everybody felt comfortable, where it was good people coming together. We want idea babies, company babies, businesses, jobs to be created in these type of environments that we create. And I think we've done a pretty good job. And thank you for coming. And that was our first full day conference after the pandemic. We took a risk, and it felt pretty special that day. We did 8 hours of programming, and we've never seen butts in chairs the entire time. That was pretty crazy. And then we also had, what was cool is the space also had a personal residence, a beautiful brownstone, where we did more of the music, culture, food over there. So people could get educated, but then also have their conversations and take those conversations in a place where you were hanging out, listening to music, eating, seshing. And that's how we think, that's how cannabis business has always been done before it was legal. And we wanted to just continue with how cannabis business is done in whatever capacity you want to do it.
I mean, it's you absolutely created that, and then some. So I have to say, my husband Patrick and I got invited to the happy hour after by Kim B.
Oh, love
Um,
her.
I love her so
Love
much.
her.
And I reached out to her because we just so happened to be in New York at the same time. I knew this event was going on because I knew about On The Revel, because of just all of the buzz and the experiences that you're creating. And I texted Kim and I'm like, sis, I typically I'm not like the favor asker. I like to bring I like to contribute as opposed to be the asker in a relationship. But man, I'm like, if there's any way we can get into this, she's like, okay, listen, it's totally sold out. But if you show up for cocktails, that may be okay. So that's what we did. And God, it was like from what we learned we learned so much from the people who were there
Yeah.
that night. It was
Yeah.
it was electric.
Yeah. New York is pretty special. Like the way I describe New Yorkers is people are very multifaceted. I grew up on the West Coast. I grew up in Oregon, went to school in Seattle, spent 10 years in San Francisco, 5 years in LA, but I've been bi-coastal with New York, especially specifically Brooklyn, for about 16 years. And I love the people on the East Coast. It's very multifaceted. And what I mean by that is if I talk about folks, and I'm probably going to get called out for this, but when I talk about folks on the West Coast, it's kind of one note. It's pretty predictable. But you come over to New York, and everybody has all these different interests. So it's just pretty amazing that all the people that are interested in cannabis, if you're living and surviving in New York, it means that you're probably an expert at something else: fashion,
Yes.
music, food. So that's
Yes.
the amazing thing that I feel that New York brings, is cannabis is not going to be the primary thing about the industry.
Yeah.
It's going to be like a supporting character of the primary things that people already love and are experts at in New York. And I think that's the goal for cannabis. It can never be just primary all the time, because it just gets boring, and it's not what cannabis is about. Cannabis has always been a supporting character for all the things that people love. And that's what we're trying to, that's our end state, is creating events and creating fun things where it's not just cannabis people there. When I love cannabis people, but cannabis people, sometimes you don't know how to party. Sometimes it gets a little bit redundant. So we want to bring the other folks that want to participate and enjoy and bring a different vibe and create the diversity that should exist in any type of industry.
Yes, in any community.
Exactly.
A community encompasses a diversity of products, thoughts and experiences, and just that little slice of the community, the cannabis is just, it gets old. And I say that with all the love in my heart. I always feel grateful to be let into these things, because we're typically the media, people just trying to get the shots and talk to the interesting folks who are really doing the work. But yeah, man, it's fun when there are artists around and
100%.
musicians who aren't like, oh, what are you smoking now? Well, did you know that, it's like, dude, let's talk about art and smoke and
let's dance. Let's dance. Like I miss the dance parties from New York back in the day. Let's do some of that too.
Yeah. So my husband Patrick lived in Brooklyn for 10 years, and he did his 30s there. And it's, I hear that from him, and I feel that vibe from him. And when we're partying with cannabis people, he's typically the one who's like, all right, so, let's go do something else and talk about something else.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's a producer. He started, as a video, in film is where he started. So that's where his heart is. My heart is very much in cannabis, but I think it's really about the storytelling and sharing with a mainstream community, because I'm in Texas, Lulu. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, There's
Come
lots of
on.
stuff happening. Oh my goodness.
You know,
It's like the most progressive people that I meet there living in the most non-progressive like government.
right.
It's a really interesting mix that's happening out there.
It's this conflict between reality and fantasy, and government, and our what we've got going on right now is very much it's they're trying to sell the Texas population a lot of fantasy. They're they're
Yeah.
they're they're smoke and mirrors. They're driven by greed. They being those people in power who are afraid to give up their seats to introduce fresh thought because they're getting paid too much. There's a sale for sale sign on the Texas Capitol, which is larger than the US Capitol. And that's something that a
Crazy.
Texan would say. But anyway, we strive to create events that do incorporate cannabis as well, so that it gives people another reason to come, and then they're curious about it. And so things are happening in Texas, but we would love to have to help in any way facilitate an On The Revel event, maybe during South by.
Ooh. Oh yeah, we would love that. I think Jacoby and I've been talking about submitting a panel, so like that could potentially happen.
Hey, let's do it. So we co-hosted an event with Happy Monkey this past South by that benefited Last Prisoner Project, and
Nice.
that was a wonderful feeling, just knowing that here's this oppressive kind of regime that we're living in, but we are still progressing the movement. That felt good, and that New York energy. I mean, come on, it just feels
Yeah,
great.
I'm addicted to this. Like, I feel like New York City is just a
Yeah.
population of type A drivers just trying to get shit done, and it really resonates with my first generation Chinese immigrant like goals and motivations, which is like, let's just build and do and see what happens, and like we have this one life, so let's leave something, right? Like
Yes.
I don't have kids, so it's definitely not going to be my genetics, but I want to build as many company babies with the most amazing people as I can this lifetime.
Oh God, that's incredible. I love that mindset. And thank you, because it benefits so much more than just one child in the world. It's these companies that you're building seem to truly have the human in mind and the human experience in mind, and that's
Yeah,
what higher good can you do?
I think so in by day I'm actually a user experience and experience designer. So
Yeah, tell me
my
more
whole
about that.
so my I fell into tech, and this is going to date me, but I fell into tech in 1993 when the internet was just coming online.
Yes.
So I had my cousin who's older than me was like, hey, I'm working for this web company, do you want to make $10 an hour? And this was in 1993, and I was like, oh hell yeah, $10
Wait.
an hour, that's amazing.
Cha-ching.
So my
Were you in Seattle at the time?
I was in Seattle. I was in
Okay.
Seattle at the time. I went to University of Washington. This was
Okay.
right my freshman year. And my first job was to go to all the car dealerships, grab all the brochures for the makes and models, and put them online. So back then, Yahoo had maybe 40 links. And so that's how I got into tech. I,
Yes.
started learning HTML. That was my
Mhm.
job. And then after my internship was over, they're like, hey, you're in school. Do you want to just work part-time for us? And I'm like, yes, of course. So I was a molecular biology major because my goal, I really wanted to go into genetics, but
Wow.
fate intervenes.
Mhm.
And I went down the tech route. And back then, no one knew, I didn't even know how to describe myself. But now we have a full practice called user experience.
Mhm.
And all those
Mhm.
things that I learned along the way, we use for our programming and all of the other projects that I've been involved in.
Absolutely. You can tell that there is a very strong tech foundation with, at least On The Revel. It's a pleasant experience. And I think that's how I knew about you before any of my friends even told me. It's just, I feel like you get um, I don't know, you tap into something, and you do it in a very slick way, I think. So have you always worked then? So you worked for your cousin and this web business.
Yeah.
Then did you go on to work for someone else? Like when did I'd love to hear
Yes.
more about your career trajectory.
Oh, so I, went through the whole .com. I spent probably 7 years specifically dedicated to automotive space.
Mm.
And then moved to moved to New York after Seattle, experienced my first winter, said fuck this, ran to San Francisco, and I spent 10 years designing products and services across the board for different industries. For example, my favorite project was with Thermo Fisher. I designed the software that ran their mass spec and chromatography machines, which is now used in a lot of the testing facilities, as well as, a manufacturing side of the house for cannabis. I worked for the Leukemia Society. Bloomberg was one of my clients, MasterCard, Pearson, McGraw-Hill. So across the board, Honeywell. So had really interesting learnings for both startup companies as well as deep enterprise systems.
Yeah.
So that was what I was doing. And then some friends, when Washington State came online for adult use, called me and said, hey, we're using this track and trace system or seek to sell. It's really clunky. Can you come take a look and see if there's anything you can do with streamlining it to match our workflow? So I came back to Seattle. That's exactly when the seek to sell company closed their APIs, and which means you can't read or write anything to the program anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, sorry guys, this isn't really something I can help out with because I can map your workflows for you, but I don't know how you're going to enter that data to push it into the track and trace. So these are my brothers. It's the root science guys. Shout out to Fatty, Naned, Jeff, and Jim. I've known them since I was 19. So they basically said, well, why don't you hang out and see if there's anything you want to do in cannabis? It's an opportunity. So I lived with those guys for about a year. They had a producer processor license, which means that they can grow and they can also manufacture and package. But the interesting part that I resonated with me is they had root sciences, which was the machine installation and setup.
Mm-hmm.
So they had machines that could make cannabis oil not taste like cannabis anymore. So, there was like that big shift
Yeah.
that happened. So I got to go with them on these installs across different markets in the United States. And I got to see, from, somebody putting the machine in their basement or their garage to these, up to $10 million build outs on the East Coast. So it was a real eye opener to just kind of see what was going on.
Yeah.
I've always been both coasts. So it was really cool to see like, oh, yes, East Coast is going to be more like this, which is going to be more scientific and business oriented. They're going to track the data more.
Yeah.
West Coast is still, coming out of, legacy and underground where data collection, anything you wrote down could be used against you in a court of law. So there was just different motivations that people
Yeah.
were driving people and how they were,
Yeah.
keeping track of things. So I did my first startup, which turned out to be a failure, which I learned a
Hey.
lot from.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. It
so
was
big lesson learned from
education.
that. Yes, education.
Paying for education. You don't have any student
It,
loans, maybe a little bruises, maybe a
yeah,
few
some
bruises.
bruises. It was a tech. It was going to be track and trace specifically for manufacturing and if so extraction through post processing. It was a little bit ahead of its time, and what I learned with that is never be swayed by what's on paper. So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
in cannabis,
So true.
in
In
cannabis
cannabis.
right now, we're still raising a baby. So what you need is people that are going to be hands-on raising the baby. What you don't need is someone who thinks this industry is like even a teenager where they can sit from behind and just delegate and give orders to. Like
Right.
that can't happen right now.
No.
So, don't ever get swayed by someone's resume. Always do your due diligence.
Great
um,
advice.
you probably have more, if you've been in the cannabis industry, you probably have a lot more understanding of what is actually happening than someone who has deep experience in another who's a C-suite or director, VP from another industry that, you know, you might think, I thought that they're like, oh my God, they've
Yeah.
done all these startups, they have all this information, they're going to help me. And it
Yeah.
just didn't happen like that. So that was my biggest lesson from that.
Great lesson learned. I mean, just great advice. I mean, just because so many, I think, cannabis entrepreneurs are just, you know, we're in love with our ideas, as are all entrepreneurs are. And it's just too easy when you see money dangling to take it.
Yeah.
Because you know that you're going to do good with it. You know what
Yeah.
your intentions are, but you don't know what the expectations on the other end are, you know, and they don't even, you know, they're not in it for the long run. They don't understand the business. If they don't understand the business, they will
This is
never
a
be on
long
the same
game.
page. Yeah.
This is a long game. It's not like you're dropping into tech, you know, a startup in tech with kind of already established standardization of labels,
Yeah.
you know, existing infrastructure, examples they can go by.
Yeah.
It's completely different. And that's what's beautiful about it, is you can create your own path. And
Yeah.
that's why, you know, Jacoby and I don't know if people know this, but On The Revel is our passion project. It's not even our day-to-day job.
Wow.
So this is something where we love it because we get to run it how we want to.
Mm-hmm.
We get to do all of these experiments and see what works and what doesn't. And that's what's pretty fucking rad about this industry right now, is you can create your own path.
Yes.
And rarely do we get these opportunities in our lifetime where something new happens and you're not confined by the rigidity of how things have been created by these rules and regulations of folks that you've never met. So this is why, you know, I love it. I think Jacoby probably say the same.
That's incredible. That is incredible. And I think in no other industry would you hear that story. This is our passion project and also your long-term project. Like, let's be real, you're making the impact that you're making now, so that you can continue to bring more people along and build that influence. You know, that's what this industry needs more than ever, is competent spokespeople, and always has. And what I think your events create is that conversation outside of the industry, if that makes sense.
When we first started, it just felt like it was still almost an exclusive thing, whether it was money, whether it was access to genetics, whether it was you know, access to real estate. It was almost like, you know, it was, people were holding a lot of things to their chest.
Yeah.
And I just heard IP, and I was just like, well, people have been growing weed for a really long time.
Yeah.
You can only extract it certain ways. So where is all this IP coming from?
Yeah.
And what Jacoby and I really wanted to do was just open the gates so people could have access to information. People could have access to great partners. We're not saying that everybody should go into cannabis, but what we're saying is, if anybody's interested, there should be resources for people to make informed decisions about jumping into this game, because those headlines of $50 billion, $20 billion, I don't know where that money is. I haven't seen that. There's only been a handful of folks or organizations, you know, MSOs that might have that.
Yeah.
But in order to have any healthy industry, there still needs to be the tails, which is the medium and small size businesses. So our goal is to make sure that folks that want to check this shit out are able to do so in a transparent way. And that's what On The Revel is about.
I love that. I'm just making a note of when you said that, because I need that to be a social clip, because it feels it just feels great to hear, you know, that there are organizations who are specifically focused in on that, and, you know, other people coming up, other people finding success in this industry, not just me. I mean, it just feels, it's very narcissistic industry. It's all about our own thing, and it's just like, God, it just gets so
it's
old.
not, it's, the plan has never been about me. The plan has always been about community, and that's what we are trying to foster. You know,
Yeah.
Jacoby is going for a manufacturing license. I will be going for retail license in New York. And we want to share our experience along the way.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have our Dope People Discord where, you know, if anybody wants to join, it's free. We have Dope People membership area off of our website at ontherevel.com where we post resources. You know, there's decks, there's, you know, application strategy stuff that Point Seven Group, one of our partners, Ashley is amazing, and her team as well. So, you know, we're just posting things that we discover. We have a directory that we've started, just listing folks that we've worked with or first degrees have worked with that we think are cool. So just trying to share,
Awesome.
and hopefully, you know, those things are helpful for folks. If there's anything that people are interested in wanting to learn more about, we are very accessible and approachable, and we do our programming specifically around what is important to our community. And that's how we do our programming in general with On The Revel. I'm really proud to say we've never done things like speaker, you know, calls.
Mhm.
We basically create the programming based on themes that or questions that we hear from our community. We create the program, and then we'll go in our Rolodex and say, okay, who would be the best speaker for this topic?
Mm.
So it's always our first degree or our first degree's first degree. So it's only within 2 degrees of all of our speakers. And that's how we've been able to really curate a really tight community of really great speakers. We will talk, we always want to make time with our speakers and be like, hey, let us tell you a little bit about our demographic. Let us tell you about what resonates with our people. You know, we really want you to condense that 30-minute speech that you've done for every other
Mhm.
conference out there, and really curate it to the 10 minutes that is really impactful
Mhm.
for our folks. And
Mhm.
that's how we like to do it.
That's great. So, you know, you're not just delivering information out there and connecting the information to the consumer, to the market, to the guest, but you're curating that information. You're curating the messaging because you know this is what your guest wants to hear.
Exactly.
That
And the
is.
other thing is, whoever's on our stage, we want them to be the guy. You know, New
Mhm.
York, I think New York is very different. I think the sales cycle here for anything is a little bit shorter,
Uh-huh.
only because if I was like, hey, Liz, tell me what software platform you're using. I love you. I trust you. Work together. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I used Y. I'll be like, cool, I'm going to use Y too. You know,
Yeah.
it's very high touch, and I don't think a lot of people understand that from other markets. Like,
Hmm.
you know, if you're going to create a Salesforce here, your Salesforce better be New York. It's not going to be a remote access like in
Mm-mm.
other markets.
Yeah.
It's just very high touch. So whoever we invite to be on our stage, irrespective of their company, we want that person to be the guy or the girl that our audience remembers. Like, oh shit, I heard her speak on the Revel. They do security. Dude, that's the girl I'm gonna go with. And
Yes.
that's the vibe that's here, you know? So we're hoping that we can create some shortcuts and just connect people.
Oh God, I love that. I'm just getting so pumped up about it. Just personally on a, on a personal level, somebody in this industry, somebody wants to learn more and connect. And, I know I'm all the way down here in Texas, but it's a very cool club that you are building. So tell me a little bit about your role at the Cannabis Media Group.
Oh, so you're gonna like this. We have an all-female team right now. So the Cannabis Media
I
Council
love that.
was formed actually by Amy Dennison from Fino Agency, and she was previously at Curaleaf, and Joyce Sonali Williams, who's a partner at Big Rock, and also Sonoma Hills Farm. I They're amazing human beings, amazing colleagues, and I was invited to join as president this past year. So the whole purpose of the Cannabis Media Council is, you know, everyone in cannabis and CBD knows how challenging it is to do any type of marketing and advertising. We're not allowed to use Google, or not, you know, Facebook, Instagram, like all the traditional forms of being able to advertise is just not allowed.
Right.
So the purpose of the Cannabis Media Council is to really start creating standards of what advertising can look like on a national level. So our tagline is deprogramming the war on plants. So we want to collectively, as an industry, not just by brand, not just by category, but as an entire industry, move together in a way to create positive PSAs on a national level.
Yes.
So if you think of the Got Milk commercial for dairy, we want to do those types of things for cannabis. And I'm going to announce all the ladies on our board who are fucking amazing.
Yes.
So Rachel Boykins, Good Tree Capital, PharmaCann, Ophelia Chong, my personal mentor from Asian Americans for Cannabis Education, and she is an OG in LA and pretty much runs that scene there. Annie Davis, Growing Impact, Flowcana, Cannacraft, you know, powerhouse amongst brands. Allison Disney, she's our doing all of our creative Receptor brands. They're doing some amazing things for cannabis campaigns and advertising. They're a full-blown agency. Stephanie Honig, Napa Valley Cannabis Association, she's been connecting a lot with the beverages market. Dale Sky Jones, Oaksterdam University. Oaksterdam University. I'm actually an alum there from probably like 15 years ago. And Carm Lyman, she is from the Lyman Agency, and she is our PR. So pretty stoked. We're going to be creating our first campaign this year. So yeah, if anybody's interested in becoming a founding industry partner, some amazing conversations are starting to be had with different media partners, publications. So that's pretty cool to start, you know, deprogramming or creating, you know, all of those war on drugs, their commercials, Nancy Reagan style stuff that we grew up with. It's gonna be
such a joke. It was just it was bad. It was just low quality all around, but you didn't have to do much.
A little bit racist also,
so just a little flavor of racism there.
It gives me delight to think of different ways that we can, you know, change hearts and minds.
Yes. Oh God, you are speaking to my heart, Lulu. That's, you know, why we exist, why Grow House Media in Texas exists, to help, you know, tell the story in a more realistic, brighter way. And as you said, destigmatize, deprogram. Even hemp is being attacked in Texas.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're really backwards. Okay. And it brings me delight to be here in the center of it all, and to just tell a different message. And, you know, the movement is happening. It's slow, but it's going here. I'm going to send you a video that a commercial that we did for a hemp genetics accelerator.
Oh, dope.
Project. Yeah. And I'm very proud of it. It's one of my favorite works to date. And
you know what,
I
would love to see it, because I was on another podcast. It was a live one where there was a gentleman that I guess you do have medical in Texas.
We do.
One of, yeah. So it was interesting to hear his perspective as well. You know, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming along. It's coming along. Thanks to, you know, mothers of children with intractable epilepsy. It came online in 2017, actually, for those kiddos. And then slowly but surely more people have been led into the program. But, you know, as you may or may not know, there are only 2 license holders in the state right now who are manufacturing product. We can't have flower. It's very restrictive, hard to get, expensive, you know, all the things that, you know, happen when you have, you know, people at the top making laws about what they don't know and based on their own personal interest.
Yeah, scarcity mindset is running a lot of the 1%.
Yes, it sure is. It sure is. And so Texas, you know, we're slowly but surely, you know, opening up more and more. And I think with new messaging and events and bringing the community together and not allowing shame to dictate, our behaviors and our thought patterns, I think we'll be okay. So Lulu, before I let you go, I have to ask you my feminized three.
Yep.
It's the same three questions that I ask all of my guests, just because I really want to know. I think they're interesting questions and, they make me think. So question number one, tell me, who is in your dream smoke circle, deceased or living, fiction,
Okay.
nonfiction?
So I have 4. So right now I'm really obsessed with LSD. So I'm gonna say Albert Hoffman would be number 1. I would also say I would love to add Timbaland. He's like one of my favorite producers. Gonna throw in Mary J. Blige. Like I am I've girl crushed on her since the very beginning. There's just something magical. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, she
And
taught me
then
love. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know, just the way she moves, the way her lyrics, it's just I gush.
Yeah.
And then I'm really, really wanting Jesus to join the circle. There's just so much bullshit that's been enacted under his or her name. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would love some clarification on things because it was, during COVID, I was living in Mexico because of a family situation. It turned out to be a blessing. Mexico is a predominantly Catholic country.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole argument about abortion being a religious situation, I'm going to call bullshit because it's legal in Mexico. So I'm like, a predominantly Catholic country has abortion rights, but the United States does not. So I know it was really a little bit disheartening coming back and just going like, what the fuck happened? Like, oh my God. Okay, so we had a Black president and a woman got too close to the presidency. So, whoa, that was too much. Let's just scale it back before what's the 1950s.
Yeah.
So let's just do that. So I would love Jesus to smoke.
You got some
smoke with
splaining to do.
Jesus
Okay.
and just set the record straight, because I think he was probably a cool cat who said, oh, this is what I believe. If you believe it, you follow it. If you don't, that's cool. But this punishing God, son of God thing is just not the vibe.
No, it's not. And I need you to set the record straight and tell these freaks, okay? Go ahead and tell them what you want them to know. Because if I hear one more time this argument, these drugs, cannabis is a drug and God doesn't like drugs. I like to quote Genesis 1:29. Okay, God gave us an herb-bearing seed. He gave it to us. Okay, it doesn't matter which seed. Like, what are we? Ugh, but I love the smoke circle. I love the smoke circle. So, second question, and man, you really did, you really honored your board, I think, with saying all of their names and saying what they're all about, because, I want more women to hear this, be inspired, and Google, right? Every single one of their names. But the second question is always, tell me about a woman who is really inspiring you right now.
Oh, there's just so many, but I got to give a shout out to Zoe Wilder. Zoe is, I don't know, she's like a fairy that just connects everybody. I was introduced to Zoe from another lifetime, from electronic music lifetime. DJ Heather from Chicago, connected us. I think this was like in 2016 or 2017. And Zoe's just a magical human being. Mike, her partner, just super, super chill, super generous, just really amazing humans. And then, of course, Ophelia Chong. She's also a fairy. Like I call her my fairy god mentor. And then yeah, you know, Amy and Joyce, like there's just so many. Kim
So
B, like I can't
yes.
stop.
Oh
You
my God,
know,
I know. The list goes
uh,
on and on. It's almost a trick question. It is.
it is,
It
it is.
is.
I can't stop.
So many strong women just propping up this industry, infusing it with innovation and, just not even innovation in products, but, innovative ways of doing things, cutting to the chase, creating just new processes in general. There's
Oh, I
just,
have one more. I have
yeah,
one more
yes.
non-cannabis woman. Aki Baker. She is my Reiki, like my Reiki teacher. I'm part of her lineage. She has a group in Brooklyn called Minka Brooklyn, which is they spit out witches. I'm gonna say like it, and
Oh,
it's a lot of women of color. It's a lot of people for first generation who have reached back into their, you know, their lineage and their ancestors and tapped into a lot of kind of the indigenous rituals and practices that have always been there. So shout out
incredible.
to Aki and Manu from Minka Brooklyn. Like they're just amazing women, human beings as well.
Mm, thank you for mentioning them. It's there's an energy I think that comes from praising somebody out loud to another person, and then we're going to broadcast that out. And I think it's just very beautiful. You're very generous, Lulu, with that, and I'm inspired by that, I think. um, so third question is, what advice do you have for your 13-year-old self?
The squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Okay.
So always speak up, whether that's something that you want, whether that's something that you don't want, whether that's something that's unfair. Words are, you know, words are magic, words are spells. So, you know, always speak up for what your intuition, what your guts, what your heart is, you know, wanting or not wanting.
God, that's great advice at 13 or 33 or 63, truly. Um, so how can people find you personally on the Revel? Give me all of the places we can follow.
Okay, all the things.
Yes.
Okay, so website for On The Revel is ontherevel.com, and same thing for Instagram at On The Revel. We should be a lot more active on LinkedIn. I think everyone in the cannabis space should be more active on LinkedIn. It's the only social media platform that's welcoming
Right.
of
Right.
what we do. We also are having our first block party in New York, in Brooklyn, in Bed-Stuy on Sunday, October 28th. So folks in New York or surrounding areas, please come through. We're doing our standard education piece, but then we're bringing music, vendors, and food, all the things that make Brooklyn, Brooklyn.
And that's happening on 10/28.
It's happening on
Oh,
8/28, so August
8/28.
28th. Yeah.
Okay. I
So
think I
so
wanted to
come,
hear 10/28.
all.
No, that's okay though. It's
So
still.
come and dance with us. Come and dance, eat, learn with us. It's going to be a vibe. And then for the cannabis meeting, if you're interested in joining as an industry founding partner, or if you're a media group or a publishing group that wants to be part of this and really start helping, you know, support this deprogramming of all of this crazy on drugs messaging, like
Yes.
please join us. We want to do this
Yes.
as a collective industry. And one more thing to just drop, I'm now advisor for Oakland Hyphae. And Oakland Hyphae is a psilocybin testing group, and they also put this psychedelic cup on, or psilocybin cup, I should say. So I am a advisor on the user experience and research side. So can talk a
Wow.
lot about the microdosing benefits. Been doing interviews and research with a bunch of folks. So shout out to
Man.
Reggie and the team at Oakland Hyphae. It's Black owned. And I'm really, really excited to be working with that group as well.
That's awesome. Awesome. I can't wait to tap into them. I'm loving the way I'm seeing the psilocybin just enter into kind of the mainstream. Are you finding that it's, got a lot less stigma to face than
100%.
cannabis?
100%. There's not the baggage of the war on drugs.
No.
It doesn't have the baggage of racism. You know, I can talk all day about the demographic that I see who are embracing psychedelics. It's, you know, one of the questions I hear, or one of the responses I hear from folks is like, oh, I don't drink, I don't do cannabis, I don't really do recreational drugs, but I'm really open to psychedelics. And my next question is like, okay, so tell me more about that. You know, why is that? And a lot of it has just been positive press. You know, there's a lot of research that's happening. I think there's probably 80 to 100 plus universities and colleges that are actually doing research, which cannabis never had that. There's still a big stigma with cannabis, and I think it has a lot to do with color.
Yes.
You know, and the goal, my personal goal, like it is with cannabis, is, hey, these, you know, the psychedelic medicines originated from indigenous and people of color. And the current state of the world is that people of color should have access to these medicines that originated from their lineage.
Yes.
But so many folks are too scared because of the war on drugs. You know, like it's all drugs are bad. All medicines are bad. So, you know, I would, as psychedelics, I think psychedelics will probably get legalized sooner than cannabis, to be honest. It's going to be fast tracked because there's all this positive research happening. And, you know, research is research, even though they say it's double blind, you can definitely sway things a lot of the times. Just by how you word things. And, you know, so anyways, we can talk about that another time as well. But I would really love to see access giving to anybody. You know, like I feel cannabis for me, and I'm totally generalizing, and people I'm sure will disagree, but I feel like cannabis is really great for physical ailments. It's definitely a medicine. Pain management, nausea, headaches, like it's a really great tool for that. What I'm hearing from psychedelics and also experiencing myself is I call them spirit vitamins. Like they're really great for, you know, your spirit, your mental health, like the way you perceive things. So that should be given to everybody, you know? So anyway, I just don't want it to see where people who actually need a lot of this, not just the people that can afford those $1,500 sessions at the ketamine clinic, have access.
Right. Amen. Amen. I really appreciate that point of view, my sister. I really do. One thing that may surprise you is that Texas is actually, we approved a bill last legislative session, kind of secretly, 1802, that mandates psilocybin research on veterans. And so it's Baylor. So it's this massive thing that's happening that's not getting any press, right? In Texas. It's like nobody wants to talk about it, but we all support that sniper who comes back with PTSD. He's a goddamn American hero. You know, like that's what's driving this research here. And I'm glad, it's a blessing, you know, because ideally the research isn't done in such a way that it exposes the fact that these spirit vitamins are for everyone and should be made available to everyone, so that
100%.
Our government is thinking in a different way. But, you know, who knows? But I love that. I can't wait to follow. I think continue to follow that conversation and your work specifically, I think, in that conversation.
Yeah, I'm really excited. There's just too many it's so weird. It's like we're at this pinnacle of time where like there's so much cultural shit that's happening, but then there's all these, and maybe that's what always happens when there's friction, right? Then beautiful things also come out of these challenging times and these new opportunities with, you know, it's a really interesting time. I'm like, ooh, I would love to go forward in time and have a time machine and see what's happening.
You could change the location of your smoke sesh to the future. Okay. Yeah. For the feminized smoke sesh, that's what's going on.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Whoa. And then Jesus would really have some splaining to do. No. So Lulu, it was just a pleasure to have you on. Please come back.
Yeah, I
And
would love to. Thank you, Liz. It was so awesome chopping it up with you today.
yeah,
This was definitely a pleasure.
if you'd like more, subscribe to the Feminized podcast on YouTube. Follow at Feminized with Liz Grow on Instagram. Special thanks to our sponsors Moose Labs and Richard's Rainwater. The Feminized podcast is a Grow House Media production, created by Liz Grow, produced by Patrick Pope and Dennis Ray, with original theme music and audio mixing by Q at Q to King Productions in New Braunfels, Texas.